continue what we've been doing the last several weeks, looking at how the Browns' new defense under Jim Schwartz, the revamped defense, will match up against AFC North opponents. Time to take a look at the Steelers. And when you say Steelers offense, what comes to mind, Lance?
Well, what you're going to get, I think they're going to go back to a little bit more of what has made them successful over the past couple of decades. I think they're going to go back to run the ball a little bit with Najee Harris. Their draft, they took Darnell Washington, big tight end. They took Broderick Jones, big tackle out of Georgia. And then they, through free agency, I thought they got a guy who was really underrated in Isaac Seumalo. A really good guard, really physical, really, really good against the run. So I think with Najee Harris, I think they're going to take the pressure off Pickett a little bit. They do have some good receivers, Pickens. Those guys are pretty good, but I think they're going to try to run the football, and I think they're going to try to play good defense themselves.
So one of the concerns a season ago, obviously, was communication issues. Let's take a look at this first clip, what you see and what your thoughts are here.
Well, they made it really easy to pick it here. So they're going to show a 4-cross or two high safety look, and then one of the safeties comes down. And they had a number of communications issues last year, and this won't be the case this year. They're going to be in more of a one-high hat man coverage, and even if they're in a zone coverage, it's a very simple cover 3 pattern match cover 3 that's very, very simple. It's very, very easy to relate to each other. So again, not only did they have some miscommunication last year, but often they didn't know who was wrong and who should be doing what. So I think they're going to simplify. You don't want to give a young quarterback, an unproven quarterback, easy throws like this, and this is just an easy seam route. Because one safety comes up, the other safety's on the hash. I don't think you're going to see that this year with the new defense. One safety's going to be in the middle, everybody's going to be in man coverage, or those linebackers are going to be bumping those slot receivers if it is zone. So I look for much better communication in the secondary.
Let me ask you this. As a defensive coach, when you simplify the defense and you're willing to play the simple base defense, are you basically saying my guys are good enough to go out and make the plays they need to make? What's kind of the mindset when you're doing something like that?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. One is that you don't have elite talent and you're allowing the guys to play fast and simple, which is going to give them the best opportunity if they're not as good as the other team. But with the Browns, they have elite talent. So now what you're doing is you're getting into, can you be a top 5, top 10 defense? Because not only is the scheme simple, but now they get to play extremely fast and they're high-level guys. So I think what it does is it makes those guys, they know who they have, they know what their role is, and I think they'll be very fast. And what a simple defense does for me is it allows your guys to play fast. I don't care what level it is. The faster you play, the better chance you have playing good defense.
So obvious concern, and we've touched on a little bit, when you talk about the Steelers, you talk about a guy that runs the ball and runs the ball in a physical nature, and that's Najee Harris. As we take a look at this second clip, what do you see?
Well, you're going to see two things are apparent here. One is that the defensive tackles really struggled. And again, if you look at those guys inside, they don't get any movement upfield. You're not going to see that this year. Those guys are going to be more in a gap. This is kind of how they played it last year. So they were 2-gapping, getting their hands on the guy in front of them. And this year, they're going to be more in a gap, penetrating, getting upfield. By penetrating, you're going to take away some of those double teams and some of that movement. And then it's going to allow that secondary guys. Another thing you're going to see up top, they're not real sound in that deep gap. So I think with Schwartz being simple allows you to know your rules. So I think they're going to be a little bit more sound, have a little bit more gap integrity against the run. And then again, being simple, I think that one of the things they need to do besides scheme is they need to play with a little bit of attitude. They need to have a little bit of edge. If you think about the Baltimore Ravens, if you think about the 2017 Eagles, not only was the scheme simple, but there was an attitude and an edge those guys played with, something the Browns have not shown, and something I think with Schwartz, they have the personnel to play like that. So I look for them to not only be more sound, but be more physical and a little bit nastier than they've been in the past.
And we've talked before when we've looked at Jim Schwartz defenses, that's kind of a calling card of them. They do have an edge. They do have a nastiness. That's something that that's a trademark of his defenses, for lack of a better term.
Well, yeah, and you can be nasty if you know what you're doing. And once again, if you know what you're doing, you can play fast. If you know what you're doing, you're not thinking. I've always been a believer. I've said it before. If you're thinking, you're not moving. So not only do you get to play nasty, but you get to understand what you're doing. And by understanding what you're doing, everything else becomes easy. You get to play fast, you understand your rules, and you fly the football.
So the other thing that comes to mind when you think about the Pittsburgh Steelers, a quarterback who is in his second year. You have Kenny Pickett. Let's take a look at this third clip. What do you see here?
Well, they do have Pickens. They do have Deontay Johnson. So they have some good receivers. But what you're going to see here is that you're going to see that the Jets are going to show a 5-man pressure, but they're going to drop off. They're just going to rush 4. And again, they show a man coverage, but they're actually going to drop back into a cover 1, cover 3 type of situation where there's going to be a 1-3 safety look, but guys underneath in zone coverage. And if you see by him, I think it looks like, as a quarterback, it looks like he is reading man coverage and then gets strict in the zone. And you can see his feet are very, very active. They actually have good protection. So for me, that tells me he's not really sure what he's seeing. When you're unsure of what you're seeing, again, takes away from any arm talent, takes away from anything else because your feet aren't set and you throw with all arm. And this is what happens. So the Jets do a really good job of showing one coverage or showing one look and giving him another. So I think with Schwartz, they won't be in all man coverage. I think you're going to see man coverage against a lot more man coverage against the top high-end quarterbacks because it gives their DBs a chance. With the Steelers, I see them playing some zone along with man to make Kenny Pickett beat them. So not only will they crowd the line of scrimmage in man, but they'll drop out and play a little zone at times to make him go through his progressions vegan. Because in man coverage, at least you know where you're going with the ball. In zone, you got to go through a progression. So I think that they're going to play a little bit of zone against the Steelers as well, make Pickett go through all his process.
The other thing is you mentioned they showed 5, they dropped 1 off. Jim Schwartz's defense, as we've talked about before on this show, they do that a lot. They'll show 5, 6, and bring 4. You never know which guys are coming and which guys are dropping with Jim Schwartz's defenses.
Well, and I think ultimately as a defensive guy, you want to get as much pressure as you can with minimal amount of guys. The minimal amount of guys you can bring, the more obviously you can have coverage. So if they can bring 4, they can get 7 in coverage at all times. They can be in man coverage, have some guys that can do some different things with coverage. I think what he expects is that I think even though he's going to bring 5, usually when teams bring 4 over 4 or 5 guys, it's because their 4 guys they have can't get home. With the Browns, with the Myles Garrett, Obo, and Smith and these guys, they expect these guys to be able to win their one-on-one battles and get pressure with 4. So I see them doing a lot where they're going to bring 5 occasionally, but I see them bringing 4, showing 5 and 6, but bringing 4 a lot, allowing those guys to get home and then helping out with coverage in the secondary.